Today's Girl, Tomorrow's Woman organization is delighted to have you attend today. And I am truly excited about our guest. If you build it, make it make sense is the title of this terrific session. And Pam Cheuh is our featured guest. I had the privilege yesterday of spending some time on the phone with Pam, and I have to tell you, a truly impressive young woman. So, I'm Marcia Iverson. I'm the co-director of and co-founder of Today's Girl, Tomorrow's Woman. I believe Tara, my partner in crime, is also on this call. She's the co-founder, and we now are in the midst of planning for our March conference. Amani Robertson is also on the call, and she is actually the works with the Today's Girl organization, and it was instrumental in this whole virtual series. So we really thank her. And I see that Courtney Fole is also on, and she works with us as well and creates all of the wonderful graphics and stuff that we do. So with that, Pam, would you like to introduce yourself and speak, and then I will begin to ask questions.
Yes, of course. Oh, I love your background. So I'm Pam, as Marcia told you about. So I met Imani at Cornell. I studied architecture, but currently my passion is as a design strategist. I'm currently at Gensler, which is a huge architecture firm. Imagine like the Google of architecture firms. That's us. And then this is like breaking news to y'all, but I'm actually in the middle of changing jobs. So I'm moving to Adobe, which is, if you don't know, is a like creative technology company. They have things like InDesign and Illustrator, all these things. But I can tell you a little bit about that. But that's a bit on my background. And I'm excited to meet y'all today and just talk a little bit more about, my thought process and what the heck design strategy is.
Well, that is exactly where we're going to start, Pam, because yesterday or the other day when I got all the information about Pam, she said that she was an architectural design strategist. And I said, what does that actually mean? What is an architectural design strategist? So, Pam, would you like to tell us what it is? Because I don't know.
So I like to explain it. You're essentially like a psychologist of space. So you study the psychology of how people interact with their workspace, any way they interact with the built environment. I really kind of hunker down and study how they do that in order to create like a new vision for a workplace. So for example, I might study like employees at Google and really understand, these teams really want to collaborate more. They feel like they're not really connected. And maybe that's a need that they have, but the space isn't supporting that. And maybe they have too many conference rooms, or maybe it's too closed off. I help kind of understand what the employees' needs are and then recommend what would be a great kind of workplace experience for them. And then I work with the design team, which is more your traditional architecture and interior design, to help translate that into like an actual space and an actual place. So yeah, that's a bit about me and what that means.
Pam,
at Gensler, and go ahead.
I'm sorry. Once you do that, this is going to sound funny, but do you put yourself out of a job? Why would a company like Adobe, unless they have huge number of offices, have a full-time person as a design strategist?
Yeah, such a good question. So a lot of like workplace, any really workspace, depending on the size, will have someone in house like me or not. But the main thing, the reason why workplace strategy is really valuable, is because we think about our top asset in like a company is like people. So like you, the future talent, like how would we attract you to Adobe, and like what would make you successful as an employee? What would make you happy? What do you need? Um, but in order to really attract top talent like you guys, we need to create an environment that is like the place that you want to be. And then on top of that, as you're growing throughout your career at Adobe, like your needs will change, or Adobe as a business may change. And so the space really needs to help support that change, both for you, like future and existing talent, and also for the business. So actually, when people look at like the expenses or like the money behind it, like people, of course, are always like the top asset, like getting you to come to Adobe, for example, or like your salary, everything that's going to be like a company's top costs. But then the second cost is really like the real estate. So like the offices that you're in, all the like Adobe, for example, has 70 offices around the world and 23,000 employees. Um, so thinking about, if that's kind of your second largest asset to support people, like how do you be really thoughtful about it and really, really, really thoughtful and impactful with how you design your space.
So it sounds like that you'll be doing a lot of traveling as well with Adobe, going to all of these offices.
Yeah, it should be fun. It's interesting as in the pandemic right now, a lot of companies are realizing that people actually enjoy working from home. Maybe not all the time, and especially not during a pandemic. But it's actually been really great to be able to have a couple days at home to be with family, things like that. So the team that I work with is actually primarily based in San Francisco, where you are, Marcia, according to your background.
I
But I'm
wish.
actually based in New York. Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. I'm based in New York and will be based in New York. And so that's a big, just something to think about as you're thinking about like jobs in the future. I'm seeing a lot of companies looking to hire talent in more non-traditional places. Like 2 years ago, if you asked if I wanted to apply to Adobe, they would have said, well, you have to be in San Francisco to be part of this team. But now, because we're able to learn how to work more remotely or really understand that I can be just as productive in another place, they're able to tap into talent like all across the world. So it's a big shift. And especially as you guys are thinking about like your career in 5 or 10 years, like the idea that you can work for really any company, regardless of where you are.
Good. So let's talk about how you got to where you were in Adobe.
Yes. Yeah, so I was talking to Marcia yesterday. I was like, what do people like to hear about? I'm going to talk a little bit about just my journey. Starting from when high school, obviously there's more to that, but I think my story is really rooted in, I grew up in New Jersey. I don't know if any Jersey folks here, but in a town called Montgomery, which was right next to Princeton, essentially central Jersey. And through high school and through growing up, like I always realized that I like loved art and like I loved making things. I would like transform my bedroom closet into like a safari themed experience. It was like I kind of knew that I was like very crafty and I love being creative and really hands on. And high school really allowed me to, I don't know, in high school, you kind of like, maybe it's sometimes hard to find your people, but it helped me find like my passion more. So actually, if you go to the next slide, I can talk a little bit out on the exact, some visuals. Oh, sorry, next slide. Let's see. Yeah, the next slide. Yeah, so I figured out that, oh, sorry. Art was really my passion. I don't know if this still exists today, but I was very active in National Art Honor Society, which sounds super geeky. But I essentially was able to really like explore my love for painting and sculpture, and really creating. And through that, I realized that I could go to a path of like, I could go to an art school and like pursue painting and fine arts. But I also, at the time, like, I still liked math. Like, I wasn't that good at it, but I liked the ability to take like a design and like make it really real and have people experience it. So, like, in terms of my thought process as a 17-year-old, I was like, okay, well, maybe that means like architecture. Like, I can create a space that somebody would enjoy. And I like that it's kind of a blend between like art and math. Like, that was kind of my thinking. And so from there, I put together a portfolio of art. So on that slide there, you can see like there was all these paintings that I put together, but I was looking into, yeah, how to apply to different architecture schools across the country. And a big part of the like application process is actually less heavily on like SATs and essay writings and things like that, but much more heavily on yeah, like what do you create in your free time? Like, what do you love? That image there next to my paintings is my bedroom growing up. So you can see there's a lot of crap on the walls, a lot of paintings. But I basically collected a portfolio of my own artwork and then applied to a variety of architecture schools. And I ended up going to, actually, I think it's in 2 slides. I ended up going to Cornell for their architecture program. And I was telling Marcia yesterday, she's like, wow, how did you like know about Cornell? And I actually found, I knew Cornell as a school because my ex-boyfriend, or my boyfriend at the time, like I had like seen a sweater and Cornell was on it. And I was just looking at different schools. And I really, growing up in New Jersey, I really wanted to like be in a different environment. So Cornell had a really great kind of like upstate environment, but at the same time, I knew that I loved architecture, but I also wanted the opportunity to say like, let me like try my hand in like taking an engineering class or like a business class. When you're 18, like it's kind of hard to know exactly what you love. So I wanted that flexibility to say like, well, in case this doesn't work out, like maybe there's something else that I could try out. So that's how I kind of found myself at Cornell. And I can go more into that, but yeah, if there's any follow-up, Marcia.
Good. Yes, there is. I wanted to know in terms of once you finish Cornell as an architecture student, how did you make the transition to an architectural strategist? And as you mentioned before, now where you live is not as significant. How is the interview process different in terms of attracting talent from all over the world, perhaps?
Yeah,
Definitely
yeah, such good questions. I think, yeah, so I went to Cornell it's a 5-year architecture program, which is crazy that at 18, I was like, I'm going to commit half a decade of my life into this program. But at the time, it sounded like a good idea. And
well,
so
obviously paid off.
Yeah, I'm like, well, okay. So I obviously went through this program, but I feel like when you go to college, you're still like figuring a lot of things out. At least I was, and like I loved. If actually in 2 slides, there's a photo of like what the studio looks like. So the education is very like hands-on. You're building things. We had a model shop. Let's see. Yeah, I think the next slide. And anyways, it was like a studio environment. And for example, we would work on projects like, imagine a future museum. Yeah, this is great. Yeah, imagine a future museum for like the city of Buffalo or something. So we would have kind of these like make-believe projects, but we would go through a typical design process. And a big part of that was like, as you can see on the top right, that's a photo of the studio where I spent many of my waking and sleeping hours. And the photo on the left is actually my desk in my freshman year. But I realized that while I loved it, I was more interested in like, for example, if I'm designing a museum space, like who are the people that want to come to the museum? Like, what do they need? Like, what do they love? And that was kind of missing from an architecture degree, like from this architecture program specifically. But what was great about being at Cornell, like I kind of talked about earlier, there were all these different colleges. So I actually ended up finding another class that was called, in another major called Design Environmental Analysis, which was a newish program, but they essentially focused much more on kind of like the human-centered process of design. So like, how do I talk to people? How do I understand their needs? Do I interview them? Do I kind of like follow them through a day in their life? This college within Cornell was really focused on that. And that was actually just like a 10-minute walk away from where my studio was. So I ended up taking some courses there, kind of just sampling different things. And I found out that I like really loved it. Like it really spoke to me, the portion of, yeah, really like understanding people. I'm just really passionate about understanding what people need. And that was really the foundation for me in my junior year. So halfway through this 5-year degree, realizing that I much preferred that kind of side of things. So I call it like a midlife career, a midlife college crisis, where I was like, oh my God, like I'm in this architecture program, but I really love the like design strategy. It's not really in the program that I'm in. So I ended up kind of like taking classes in that college, and just a lesson in looking back, like being really open to things that you don't expect. Like I think I found out about that class through a friend of a friend of a friend. Like I think I was just sharing like late night in a cafe, like, hey, like I'm feeling some doubts about my major. Like I don't know if I made the right choice. Like I'm here for 5 years. Like what do I do? And a friend of a friend, of course, knew that, you know, there's this like class that you should check out. So it felt like very circuitous, like it wasn't very direct, but in the end, I think it helped me a lot just finding that route. Yeah.
So two things. One is,
And your second question, I didn't answer.
I'll get back to that for a second. First of all, I forgot to say that if anybody has any questions, please feel free put them in the chat. I screwed that up. I didn't say that. And also, just to back up a little bit on what Pam said, some of you may not know that a big university like Cornell, like NYU, like most big universities have different colleges within it. So when Pam said she went to another college, she didn't physically leave Cornell and go to another school. It was schools within Cornell. So again, you know, that's just the way the college works. So I'm a professor at Hofstra, and there's a school of education, there's a school of architecture, there's a school of business, there's all of those are different colleges within the umbrella of Cornell, or in this case, Hofstra.
Mm-hmm.
So I just wanted to clarify that.
Yeah, that's a great point. Yes, good point. I know, like all the lingo.
What was the interview process, both for Gensler and for Adobe? And you mentioned that, you know, the world that we live in now is not limited by location.
Yeah. Let's see. I think thinking about the future, like it's something we're thinking a lot about. Like how do we access talent from cities that we've like never really explored? And that's just kind of a product of like you see a lot of like technology, you know, like California, San Francisco based. You see a lot of like financial institutions, very New York based. It's almost like every job type has almost like their home city base. But I think in the future, it's what we're realizing, or what you start to realize is you start to recruit from the same places, same school, same areas, and that lack of diversity in your talent is going to have a huge impact on your business in terms of the types of ideas that you have, the types of conflict that might happen, but lead to really breakthrough ideas. So to answer your question around like the interview process, I think a big part of, at least when I was interviewing with Gensler at the time, was like visiting the office. I had a couple phone interviews. First I had applied online. Then there were a couple phone interviews. And then I was invited to come to the office just to like see the workspace, meet the people. And, you know, that's kind of your typical, depending on whatever job it is, that's kind of like the typical portion of things. I think maybe in the future, like for example, with Adobe, um, sometimes you aren't in the same city, you're not close to the city of where the job is. So you might imagine that the company might like fly you out at the last stage to like really understand if you like the culture and you like the people. But I think a lot of it actually can be done virtually. And what that
Did
means
you
is
have Zoom
when you guys
interviews?
are interviewing for, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, we I had a Zoom interviews just like this, like video conferencing calls. And yeah, it's exciting because there are pros and cons. Like pros is that you can meet tons of people from the company, like from different locations in the future. Um, the cons of it, of course, is like there is a big part of like going to the office and like meeting people face to face. I think in the future, like that will happen where it'll be a blend of, you'll meet like a couple, maybe you'll meet someone from India, you'll meet someone from Asia, you'll meet someone from the New York office. Like you can really understand a company at a global scale. And then maybe they fly you out to, an office that's closer to you to really understand, the culture, like meet people face to face, things like that. But yeah, it's interesting to think about, and definitely not solved yet. So we'll see and how that goes over the next couple of
That
years.
still
But
is evolving for sure.
yeah, yeah,
I did want to back up for one more second about your 5-year program. That's not something that
yeah,
you chose. The architecture program at Cornell is a 5-year program. So if you wanted to be in the architecture school and an architecture major, you have to commit the 5 years. Sometimes a 5-year program is 4 years of college and a master's degree. But that
that's
wasn't the
right. Yeah,
case in your instance.
yeah, yeah. So most college programs are 4 years.
Yeah.
In this particular program, it's called a Bachelor of Architecture. And the reason it's 5 years, it's instead of getting a bachelor's in architecture and then a master's in architecture, which would take 6 years, 4 plus 2, it they've created like a 5-year program so that when you graduate, you're accredited without a master's to be able to apply for an architectural license. So in the end, because I pursued design strategy, I didn't really need to pursue the more traditional architectural license path. But the extra year did give me the opportunity to extra time just to take classes in that other college, like I talked about. I did a study abroad program in Rome. I studied abroad in New York, which was really pivotal to my college experience, actually, because at the time I was like 19 or 20, and part of the New York City studying abroad program was actually working at an office part time, working at a company part time while you were studying. So sort of like a work study, and that helped me while I was in college really refine like what do I love about this job, what do I hate about this job, what's my future like. And when I was in New York, actually, I would set up one-on-one meetings with just random people that I found on LinkedIn, like people that I wanted to be like, or people whose backgrounds really interested me. I would say, hey, I'm a student at Cornell. I'm in New York. Like, I'd love to chat with you. I'm only here for a few months. And I think I had like 25 plus conversations with people that I didn't really know, but it was really
Oh,
pivotal at the
cool.
time. Just really helping me understand, yeah, who I wanted to be and like right in the heart of New York. So something to
And
think about. Like my
as
mentor told me to do that. Yeah.
as a student, that's pretty gutsy to, connect with people who you really are interested in the field. But look at how fruitful that was. Look at how, advantageous it was. By the way, is this picture that I'm showing on this slide, Cornell?
Yeah. So
Pre-pandemic?
this is I yes. I put this photo in the presentation. I wasn't sure if I was gonna get to it, but actually this is a good segue. So after I did my study abroad program in New York, where like you were saying, I was doing a lot of like networking, I was chatting with people, I was talking to people in real estate, I was talking to people in strategy, I was talking to people in branding, I talked to people who worked at restaurants. Like I just like was so curious about the world, and I just opened up my eyes to seeing a lot of connections between different fields. So when I came back to Cornell in Ithaca, I was like so supercharged and excited. I was like the Energizer Bunny, and I really wanted to like almost create connections between the different colleges at Cornell. So like Marsha was saying, we had like an engineering program, we have a hotel school, we have an architecture school, we have um, what else? We have like a college of agriculture and life sciences. Like there's about 7 different colleges at Cornell, and they're pretty siloed from each other. And what I love being in New York is that I could like talk to all these different industries at once. And I wanted to create that same connection at Cornell. So the photo on the screen is actually an event I founded called Raw Expo. And the whole premise was to really invite, people from different colleges to really share the work that they're doing, like the almost the design process and their thinking behind their work. So if you can imagine, this was crazy. We had someone who started Ithaca Hummus. He was like a hotel student. He was at this event, like showing people how he made hummus from scratch, from like picking the chickpeas to like packaging it and things like that. And then we also had, like an engineering student who was working on like their own version of the Mars rover, and he was like driving it around the space. And then we had like an architecture student passionate about furniture who was like sharing with people how he finds like vintage furniture and refurbishes it. So this event was really pivotal, and me as in my college career, like really finding that we're all quite connected, like we're all really creative, we're all like working on incredible things, and sometimes what it takes is just finding someone to really help connect the dots. So at this point in my college career, I was like, man, I feel like I'm a connector. Like I feel like I can connect a lot of different things. I'm seeing all these patterns between these colleges, and like no one else is really seeing this. Like how do I start to bring people together and form that community? So yeah, it's a good segue of New York to Ithaca.
Before we go on to the next topics, many colleges, and I'm sure Cornell is one of them, and I think that the audience may, the women on the call might really be interested in this. The process on campus for on-campus interviewing. How did that work?
Mm-hmm.
Did you take advantage of it? When did you start? Were internships a part of it, etc.?
Yeah, and do you mean on-campus recruiting for
Uh-huh.
jobs, or on-campus recruiting to get into Cornell?
No, on campus recruiting for jobs and internships.
Oh, yeah. Yes. So let's see. A big part of being at a college, at a university like Cornell and any other university, is that they host things called like career days. It basically allows them to invite a bunch of different employers, host this big event, and have students come to this event and meet all these different companies. So from a student perspective, it's like great. It's a one-stop shop. Like I show up to this big conference room, and like I can see like all these different types of companies and kind of like talk to people and understand what's out there. These career days would really vary by college, but specifically for architecture, we would have people from like Gensler, for example, come to the college during career days and host interviews. So you would like sign up for interview slots, you would apply online, and they would let oh, I loved your resume, your portfolio, like let's talk for 30 minutes. So that would happen right on campus, which was extremely convenient. And yeah, you would just have one-on-one conversations, and just like a regular interview process, they would ask you, at least in architecture, it was like, walk me through your portfolio, walk me through like how you think about a design problem. And through there, a lot of people kind of find internships for the summer, and move to the city or etc. For me, a couple internships that I had interned in Shanghai for an architecture firm called Perkins Eastman. I actually did not get this through a typical interviewing process. I was just like, I think I was 18 at the time. I was a freshman, and it was super random. My friend, who was much older, went to this church, and her husband worked for Perkins Eastman in Shanghai, and he was really really passionate about mentoring people in the design field. And so he helped me apply to this job in Shanghai for an internship. And I went to Perkins Eastman in Shanghai, and they're actually a New York based company. So when I was there, I actually ended up meeting like other New York leadership, and I ended up just staying in touch. While I was in school, I would follow up, and I finding myself an internship Eastman when I was in New York. So there are like, I think, multiple ways to get internships. One is like through more of the career path, career days, interviewing. But I found a lot of my opportunities really through like networking, and really like embracing the fact that like I'm young, like I'm a student, I'm really curious about the world. Like I want to understand what people do, and I want to understand like what's out there. And I think that genuine curiosity for like what people do in their paths, which you all have since you're here, is really what helped me find, people and eventually internship opportunities to explore.
So, and you've mentioned a couple of things that I think are so significant. One is never pass up an opportunity to network. Number two, follow up on them. Send a thank you note, share information with people. That's such a big part of what people need to do. You mentioned about the interviewing on campus, and the
Yes.
slide that you're showing now, or that we're showing now, I think is really critical in this process, because what I like to tell people all the time is you're interviewing them as much as they're interviewing you. And some of the considerations that you need to take or think about when you are interviewing are the things that are listed here.
Hmm.
So Pam, you want to just, piggyback on that?
Yeah. Yes, that's a great point. I think a lot, like, the power is really in your hands. Like I think as a student, it's like, will anybody take me? Like, will anyone have me as an intern? But Marsha's completely right. Like, you also have to think about like the company. It's almost like dating. Like, this is your career. Like, you want to think about like, where do I want to start? Like, does this company align with like my values as a person? Like, for me specifically, like I was really passionate about like diversity in leadership. So every company that I interviewed with, I would always try to understand, was there a woman on the board? Perkins Eastman was one of the only architecture firms who had a woman partner. Her last name was Eastman. Brad was Brad Perkins. That was really important to me. And then, yeah, I think people might not say this enough, but really understanding the culture of a company and like how they treat their employees. How do they grow you as a person and as as talent? How do they nurture people who are coming straight from school? Like, actually, when I applied to Gensler, for example, which was my first job out of college, I actually entered into something called a design strategist development program. It was like a new training program that they had started. But a big part of why I ended up choosing Gensler over another company that I was also interviewing with was that like cultural alignment. Like, when I visited the office, it felt like there were just like events going on. Like, you could tell that they hosted a ton of trainings. Like, they really cared about your personal growth. And then I also loved that I was starting with like a cohort of people. So when I started in New York, I had like 6 other people starting with me. And that, like, for me, and it's different for everyone, but like I love learning through community. I love like having kind of that home base, especially coming from college. Like, I just felt like I learned best that way. So knowing that Gensler offered this program and all these people, that really attracted me to them, because there'll be a point in your career, or like even when you're coming out of college, where you're interviewing and there's going to be like tons of companies who want you. But I think making the decision
That's a good
based on,
position to be in.
yes, it's a great position to be in. Actually, when I just joined Adobe, for example, but I was also interviewing with another company. And so it's just, as much as you're looking to like what's out there, you also have like a lot of power to really think about, yeah, what's really best for you, and how does it not only grow you like professionally and as in your career, but like where am I going to make the most friends? Like, I'm best friends with the people that I worked with, and that was really important to me. So if that's important to you, like thinking about, as you're interviewing, do I see myself here, and will I like make my best friend here? I mean, I think that's very personal to me, and there are probably different values that each of you have, but really like using those to guide your decision making process of where you want to be.
So, Pam is mentioning that, you need to know where you want to live. You want to know about the company's reputation. You want to know whether or not there's synthesis between you and the people that you're interviewing with. Could I be friends with them? Do I like, as you said, their values, that kind of thing. And never burn bridges. Absolutely.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So this, I just popped this in. Oh yeah, go ahead.
We got to go back to that. Hold on. Okay, so go to this one first, and then we'll go to your
Oh, sure.
exciting news.
Oh yeah. I'm seeing the Adobe page. Okay, so I can talk about that. I'm starting in 2 weeks. And so talking like what Marsha is saying, like, okay, I went to Gensler. It was my first job out of college. I've been there for almost 3.5 years. But like, as you're growing as a person, your needs are gonna change. And mine certainly did. So I'm moving to Adobe, and the main reason, or my thought process, was at Gensler, I was working with a lot of different types of clients. And the way I explain this, I hope this is appropriate. I'm like, in consulting, you like have a lot of levers, like you're working on a project with the technology company, you're working on a project with the financial company, you're working on a project with, I don't know, like a consumer goods company, but it's very short and it's super exciting. But sometimes the ideas you propose, you don't really get to see them completely implemented. And so I had been working with Adobe this last year as a client. I like love them. I love the people, like underscore people. And I love the work that I was doing. And I really wanted to be in a position to like help make the strategy that I was proposing come to life for like the 23,000 employees. And so I think at this point in my career, what I've realized is just as important as the company is and the role, I think sometimes almost even more important is who your manager is going to be, because that, and your team, because that's who you work with every day. Like, is it someone you respect? Is it someone you admire? And a big draw for like why I went to Adobe, like this huge company, was really the team. And I put the photo of my manager, Kate, my future manager, Kate. Hopefully she's not embarrassed. But she's someone that I really admire. I had worked with her before. She is really intent on like women's empowerment, and just like someone that I like really look up to. And so as I thought about, the point I'm at in my career, I just like want to grow as much as I can as a professional and as a person. And working with her, I would really be able to do that. So it's something to think about too. I didn't really touch on that, but beyond like who'd be your best friend, like that manager that you're working with and that broader team, like how do you respect them? Do you admire them? Do you look up to them? I think is really, really important, because they have a lot of say, like control in creating the conditions or the experience for you to be really successful at the company. So yeah, that's my latest update. You guys are one of many few that are finding out that I'm switching jobs, but it's very exciting, and I'm really excited to help shape kind of the future of creativity through Adobe, which is ultimately their mission, and it's a really exciting place to be.
You mentioned something the other day when we were chatting, and that is navigating as a young, non-white young woman in a man's field. Has that brought any specific challenges or
Yep.
things that you needed to consider?
Yes. Yeah, I think in most fields, I like, and especially I guess architecture, it's pretty like white, it's very male dominated. I think my experience at Gensler, I actually the team that I was working with was all women. I don't know how that happened, but it was a really like perfect like safe haven. And like my boss felt like my mom. Like she's just someone that I like really, really respect. So I had a really great experience there. Of course, there were always, outside of that bubble, sometimes it's hard. There's, um, of course, like uncomfortable situations where, I'm like the most junior person in the room and I'm in a conference room with like the CEO of this company and like everyone's white. Like I was working with a pharmaceutical company that was very traditionally like male and white, and like I was a woman and I was a consultant and I was hosting these workshops. And I think, well, what got me through a lot of that at first was like a lot of just like nervousness, but just really knowing that like I come from such a unique background, like I have my own point of view, like the diversity of perspectives is honestly what makes the work more interesting. And so I like, it took me a while, but I started to lean more on that. And as you're earlier in your career, like while you're not an expert at anything, you have a really fresh perspective. And so I would lean on that a lot. Like there was one project, we were like trying to design a new packaging for this product, and one of their target audiences was like millennials, which I am. And like I wasn't afraid to like channel some of that and like really be honest about like what's my generation's looking for, like what are things that are unique to us. So I think it's just like really leaning in and owning the perspective that you come in with. Obviously that helped give me a lot of confidence. And then I think it drove a big part of like why I chose Adobe, because I knew that their commitment, for example, Kate is here, but I knew that her boss is a woman named Gloria, and she's like an Asian American woman. And I'm like, that's amazing. Like, again, I'm looking at to see that there's actually like women in leadership, and that's a signal of like a culture that's progressing. So yeah, it's just things to think about. But just some examples of in the moment, like as I was freaking out, as I was nervous, like those were kind of the affirmations that I would tell myself that helped me just grow and yeah, really stretch myself.
Good. So now we're sort of coming to the end of this amazing hour with you. And it's not easy being the only panelist, I have to say. You've done an amazing job, Pam, but very exciting. Pam has combined her art interest with her interest in giving back to the world, and has, uh-oh, how did I do that? Let me go
Oh.
back. Wait a second.
Oh yes, I think I know where you're going.
Okay. I thought it was on here. Here it is.
Yes. Oh
Okay.
yeah, you're good.
Okay.
Yeah.
Slideshow from this current slide. Okay. So sorry.
Yeah, no worries.
Pam has created Circular Place, as I guess
Yes.
this was a COVID be at home kind of experience, where she is, well, I'll let you tell them about it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Can't wait to order.
Marsh and I were chatting last night. Yeah. I guess something to think about is, I mean, for me personally, during the pandemic, I was really bored and I was overworking. But I also really wanted to find ways that I could have an impact on my community. And I've been really close with City or New York, which is an educational nonprofit in New York City. And I wanted to raise money for them. That was like my goal. I was like, how do I raise money for them? And how do I help support them so they can support students? And I channeled my talents in creativity and art to start to make clay necklaces and clay dumplings. I had never used it before, but I just thought that in this time in the pandemic, it would be fun to just like play and experiment. And so, yeah, I started in September with my friend, and we helped raise over $12,000 for City or New York. And it's just, I don't know what the takeaway is per se, but I think I just kind of, I would never underscore like kind of the side hustles that you have in addition to your career. Like this is something that I would be doing like after I worked a long day. And it was like a way that I can decompress, a way that I could give back to City or New York, just a way that I could play with clay, quite literally. So It actually helped me. This is so
Are
true.
magnets, right?
The dumplings are magnets. Yes, thank you, Marcia. You're like my sales agent. They're magnets. But it's funny, like one story is, I was working with Adobe as a client and I talked about this, like I started Circular Place. I'm trying to raise money and my clients were really like excited about my passion and they ended up ordering necklaces for me. And, you're just able to connect with people when you're really more honest with yourself and what you're passionate about. So yeah, just a fun tidbit. I can send people dumpling magnets after this and you can take a look. But yeah, just a fun project right now.
I adore it. I just think they are so, so cute. And there's an ice cream scoop and a play set and a smiley face, really, really cute. And the fact that you're giving back to an organization that means something to you is certainly pretty admirable. I'm really impressed. So if anybody has any questions for Pam, if not, what I wanted to talk about or to share is, oh, sorry, there is a question.
Ooh, I know. I feel like I've been flying blind. I would love if there are questions that you have that I can answer. Hey there.
Hi, you, I mean, are just insanely impressive. And I was just curious if you could maybe talk about, I mean, I'm sure you're human at the same time. So with the incredible networking that you do and the ability to follow up, do you find, I mean, how do you either overcome nerves, especially at the age that you were, and like the fear of rejection or any of that stuff? I imagine that you had to have some of it at that age, or were you always like that?
Yeah.
Were you just always just really great at that?
Yeah, I answered that. No, I definitely wasn't. I mean, I'm still pretty shy, but I actually got advice from a mentor of mine in high school. And by mentor, I mean, he was my friend who was like a year older than me, but I looked up to him and he gave me advice. He was like, yeah, like, especially when you're a student, like people love to help students, love to share their story. Like, don't be afraid. Like, for example, you're not owing them anything per se. Like, you're adding value to them too. Like, your perspective, your curiosity is like giving them a lot of life, giving them a lot of perspective, versus I think a lot of people typically think about it like, I'm taking their time, like, I'm not worth it, like I shouldn't reach out, which is definitely something that I thought about as I was like writing my hello emails. But I think over time, like my curiosity bug became more of my fuel over the like anxiety of like, I'm 18 and like they don't care about me. So I think as I got into a rhythm of just like reaching out to people, it just became less scary. Like, I don't remember the first person I ever reached out to, but I was definitely nervous. And I think a big part of the reach out, this is like kind of tactical, but like be honest and like be authentic about like why you want to connect with them. Like, for example, I reached out to someone and I was like, I see that we both went to like, we both grew up in New Jersey, like we both played tennis, and like I see you're in design. Like we have these connections. Like it always helps to kind of connect the dots of like why you're reaching out to somebody. And it makes it more likely for them to like respond and say like, hey, yeah, let's catch up. But yeah, I hope that answers your question. I think it's just a mixture of like curiosity and realizing that like, yes, they're being really gracious with their time, but you're also like really valuable in like sharing your perspective and your curiosity and asking them questions. So definitely don't be afraid to do that.
I just find it so impressive, just as a trait for any career, to be able to really hone, or a skill, I guess, to hone that skill. And then the other question I had was that the field that you're in, I know you only graduated a few years ago, but was it a real, like, was it already a truly existing field?
Yeah, it's a good question. Not really. Like it was existing at the time that I was graduating, but I actually, when I applied to Gensler, they started this like training program to like raise the next generation of design strategists. So, it was kind of like evolving. It was happening, but there wasn't really like a formal education or college to go to for design strategy. Cornell's college program was like the closest thing to it, but it wasn't really there. So yeah, I think at the same time, like I think it's a good point of just like there's some stat, but like there's a certain percentage of jobs that like will exist in the future that just like don't exist today, and like it's okay that I mean that's just how it is. And like I was like, I don't want to be a lawyer, I don't want to be a doctor, I don't want to be an architect. Like there's very traditional paths that weren't really speaking to me, and design strategy was a field that was evolving that I actually was really hard to find, like to your point. And I only found it because I was talking to people so much in New York that I met this woman, Hannah. She's like, this is what I do. And I was like, oh, I like what you do. What do you call that? She's like, workplace strategy. And I was like, what the heck is that? So a lot of it is just like, just kind of navigating things, because there are so many roles out there that A, don't exist yet, or B, exist and you really can't understand until you talk to people about it.
There is actually somebody who recently put it together, this poster that said 85% of the jobs that kindergarten kids, today's kindergarten kids will have, don't exist. So if you're 5 years old and in 20 years, there's going to be a huge number of careers that don't even exist. So I encourage everybody to get on the website for Circular Place and buy your Valentine's Day presents from her.
Oh my God, Marcia, can I hire you?
They're beautiful, guys. They're beautiful. I love the pieces. I have about 4, Pam.
Yes, you do. Yes, you do.
Well, we look forward to a customized TETW piece.
I will. Pink and purple. What's up?
That's right.
I will do it.
Please, if you would like a gift for participating today, send your real mailing address to either Tara, either Tara, Amani, or me, and we will send you a gift. And then I want to remind everybody about our socials community, Facebook, Instagram, YouTube. Next session is Dare to Love Yourself, which is going to be on February 10th. This is on diversity, inclusion, and self-advocacy. And then we're going to have our virtual conference on March 20th from 10 to 12. And we hope all of you will participate in that. If anybody has any other questions, great. If not, a huge thank you to Pam. You did an amazing job.
Oh, thanks, Marcia.
Young woman. Proud to know you.
Oh, thanks, Marcia.
So I thank you, all of you. If there's anybody else who has any questions, otherwise we will see you. Hopefully the next one is on February 10th. And enjoy your evening. And Pam, again, thank you so, so much.
Of course. Thank you, guys. I'd love to see who is on the call. I feel so lonely because I can't see anybody. But if you want to turn your camera on, you can say hi. But it was great meeting you all virtually. And thanks again. I think like your curiosity of just even being here is, y'all rock. And I'm sure you're doing all of these things already. Bye.